Welcome to Girlish Gurus. I'm Joy.
And I'm Susan. And we're here to have discussions about topics on many subjects that we hope are informative, uplifting, and fun.
So, let's get started.
Let's. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Girlish Gurus.
Susan, what are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to talk about volunteering. And I love this topic because I've been volunteering for all my adult life and then some, I think. And I just find that it's
fulfilling. It does a lot of things, which we're going to get into.
It does a lot of things. And of course, there's the obvious things that you're doing for the organization for which you may be volunteering, which are you're offering some extra hands and help for people in need or organizations in need that may not have big budgets. You're supporting worthwhile causes, whether that's a animal shelter or a nonprofit organization of some sort, like a food bank. And you're more than likely helping your community in some way.
Right.
Because most of these places you're going to volunteer are a positive addition to the community in some way or another. Mm-hmm. So, that's just kind of the ways you're benefiting something outside yourself. But a lot of what we're going to talk about today is how volunteering can actually benefit you as an individual or you and your family if you choose to do it as a family or with friends, right? So we primarily looked at 3 articles to get this information, but a lot of it is kind of common sense. And the first article is from an organization called Help Guide, and they just talked about the surprising benefits. But this information is supported in pretty much every other article you might look at that talks about volunteering. So how can volunteering be a benefit to you? Well, there's just tons of ways. For one thing, I know for me, whenever I moved around, it was a great way for me to meet new people, connect to the community, fill my time while I met new people, got used to the area, learned my job, and it just kind of boosts your confidence as far as being in a new area. So one of the big things they talked about is that it does connect you to others, right?
And that's huge.
Of course it is.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Especially for women in our age group who might have gone through some sort of a life-changing event.
That's right.
And maybe they have moved, or you can imagine the circumstances. That can be an enormous help.
Right.
Just getting connected. Yeah.
Right. And it is a way for, like, I know the different times that I did it when I moved, it connected me with people that had common interests to me.
And don't you still have friends from some of the volunteering opportunities?
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. All over the place. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And we can talk a little bit more about those. But some of them will be lifelong friends and are meaningful relationships to me. And
I think one of them was Vicki Young, who we've had on the podcast.
You are correct.
Yes.
Yeah, when I was very young, working in Pittsburgh, so I was still in my 20s, Vicki and I both volunteered at Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh, which is a renowned children's hospital. And the reason I chose to volunteer there was because I had gone there as a child.
Oh, wow.
And was part of a study. And I kind of wanted to give back because that was something that was of no charge to my parents. And they were studying I had a heart murmur. And they had me come in every couple years just to track how it changed as I grew up. And I just wanted to give back to them. So I went and volunteered, and what Vicki and I did, and this is how we met, and she's one of my best friends to this day, is we played with the kids or held the babies that were there. And oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how fulfilling that was. Here you are thinking you're going to help the kids and do something for them. And it was, for me, it was so selfish because I got so much more out of it than I was probably giving to them. And I would even go on Christmas Day in the morning and hand out presents with Santa for the kids. And that was one of my favorite times to go.
How fun.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, I won't belabor that, but it does connect you with people.
It does.
There's no question.
And you do look cute in an elf hat, I will say. Yes.
As we have seen. Yes. Another thing, and this has been borne out in several studies, is that volunteering is great for your mind and body. So psychological well-being, it helps with depression, it reduces stress. The studies found that you're moving around more when you're doing stuff. And there are volunteer opportunities where if you don't have the ability to do that, they'll still find a spot for you, right? But typically, if you're volunteering somewhere, you're going to be moving around, having physical activity,
Right.
which will help. So like I know that near me in the city, there's a garden that you can go volunteer and help with maintaining the city garden.
And that's great exercise. Yep.
Great exercise, right? Or there's the Interfaith Food Shuttle here where I volunteer sometimes, and you can go help pack boxes for families, for seniors, pack backpacks for children. So you're in a warehouse running to get the things to put in the boxes, and so you're up. You're moving around. It's not heavy work, but it's active work, right? So there's things like that can help you on a physical level. So it can give you a sense of self-confidence, I think, because depending on what you're going to be doing for the organization, you might be doing something you've never done before. And when you try something new and you succeed at it, that builds your self-confidence, right? And especially like for young people, if you're volunteering somewhere, you might get assigned to a team or a committee where you are going to learn something that's going to serve you and build your self-confidence on your full-time job, right? So those are all good things. Also, it provides a sense of purpose. And that's especially important for older people, I think, who once they stop working can tend to sometimes feel like they're lost and don't have a purpose. And for women, it's when you retire, it's sometimes a little easier because we tend to have more friends, more girlfriends. Men, maybe not as much, right? So what a great opportunity for men in this case to find another purpose for themselves.
Right. It allows you an opportunity to be social.
Exactly. And be among other people.
Right.
Because once you retire, that day-to-day, although it's changed a lot since COVID, of course, people aren't necessarily going into the office anymore. So here again, another great way that you can be out and among people when you might not be for your work any longer is to go and volunteer, right? It has also been shown in studies that volunteering can lessen symptoms of chronic pain and reduce the risk of heart disease.
Interesting.
Well, I think just because, again,
You're more active.
it does fight depression, they say, for all the reasons we've said. There's so many studies about being in community, being with other people. Every study you read, the Blue Zone study, anything you read is telling you community is so important. And depression affects your heart disease as well. So if it's easing depression, that only makes sense. It's going to help with heart disease.
Right.
So there's so many ways that it can help you with your mind and body that I don't think you can even measure the benefit of. For young people especially, and then even for some older individuals, I think it can help advance your career. This probably isn't something that I would necessarily look to it for, but I can see for young people, like if you're still not sure what you want to be doing, you might want to volunteer at an organization where you're going to learn about something else that might pique your interest. And so it's a way for you to do it without taking a big risk and doing it on your own time, right?
Right. And this article talks about you building skill sets.
Yes.
Which is something I felt like I totally get that. If you're a young person and you can't find a job in the career field that you are interested in and you can find a volunteer opportunity there, that's a possibility. It can help you build your resume by practicing those skills in a volunteer environment.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a great, think about if you love animals, but you're not sure how to break into a field where you could help animals. well, what a great way but to go volunteer at a shelter and figure out, is this really what I want to do? And the skills and the knowledge you could gain by doing that kind of volunteer work to really make a decision about, is this what I want to do? So I think, that's great. And then for people who have maybe worked a little longer, there are opportunities to serve on boards.
True.
For nonprofits, and that's always a good thing because they need leaders and people with experience and knowledge to help run the boards of these organizations. And they aren't paid. They can't afford to, They're looking for people who are willing to give of their time and knowledge. So, and it's fun. I used to have so much fun volunteer. I still have fun when I volunteer. It just brings me joy.
You can never have too much joy.
But right? It's energizing, I think. Again, you're usually around people who are happy to be there. I can't ever remember volunteering where the people that were there weren't excited to be there and doing whatever it is they were there to do.
Right.
And who knows, it could spark your creativity, it can spark your motivation, it can maybe give you a vision for something else you might want to do on your own. Something you want to create yourself, and it carries over into other parts of your life. So I actually spent a year between jobs. I left my job in Chicago and was not sure what I wanted to do next, where I wanted to go. I had some ideas, and I was exploring those by doing some volunteer work. I was trying to figure out, did I want to move to a nonprofit kind of organization? So I spent that year volunteering at my church. They had started a new campus in the city, and I kind of took charge of all of the things the church was doing in the community to raise awareness for things, we had a backpack drive for the kids for school. I was in charge of that. We had a coat, glove, hat, mitten drive. I was in charge of that. We did Feed My Starving Children, which was meal packing for families in Africa. I was in charge of organizing all of that and getting the volunteers for that. So I loved it. It was one of the most amazing years of my life, and I didn't get paid for any of it. If I could have kept doing that, but I would have been thrilled. And the people you encounter, because they're coming because they want to help.
Right.
It was just incredible. So it does add a lot to the enjoyment of your life. I can tell you that. So.
All right. So you're at a point in your life where you've decided you're going to volunteer. Where do you go? How do you find volunteer opportunities? And how do you vet them? Do you have any suggestions about that?
Well, I think there's a lot of things you need to think about. So first of all, what interests you, right? Is it animals? Is it children? Is it your community? Is it building, like Habitat for Humanity? There's the volunteers that do that, love that. Anyway, we talked about if there's a career you're considering. So I volunteered at Children's Hospital. If you're thinking about maybe being a nurse or a doctor or some other medical field, maybe volunteer at a hospital. They always need volunteers, for sure. Right? So think about that. Also, do you want to volunteer on your own, which some people may want to? Or do you want to be part of a team, part of a group and volunteer? Think about that.
Or do you want to volunteer with your family?
Which is a great way to spend time together as a family. I mean, I can't think of a better way, honestly, to spend time with your family when you have free time. It teaches your children to give back. It allows them to see you in a different role, a different way. And I would think it would build
character.
Yeah. And just closeness.
Exactly.
Within the family, right?
Yes.
What skills do you have to give back? Maybe you can think of it that way. Think about what you could do that you would benefit an organization with, right? So what skills? How much time are you willing to commit?
Right.
So there's lots of things to think about, and you probably need to, when you're looking at different organizations, and make sure you look at a few different ones before you commit. But even once you do, I mean, organizations are used to people coming and going, so don't have guilt over if it's not a fit for you. But before you start, ask questions. Make sure you know what's going to be expected. Make sure you understand the time commitment. And look at the organization, too. Make sure it's a legitimate organization. You do want to make sure of that. But most communities or cities have you can just type in volunteer near me or whatever. And there are organizations that actually can help match you too with volunteer opportunities that are in the city. And that's all they do is they connect with all of the nonprofit organizations. They may not be connected necessarily with churches or houses of worship or things like that, but most of the other nonprofits, they're going to know what's in your city and be able to help you find a place that's going to be a good fit for you. Yeah. So those are great places to start if you don't know where to start, if you don't have something in mind necessarily. But we've talked about a few examples, but just to make sure you know, like there are community things that you can, there's community theater, there's museums, there's parks, there's historical places that you could volunteer if those things are of interest to you. Libraries, senior citizen centers. We talked about the animal rescues or shelters. If you're into sports and you like kids, you might want to volunteer to be a coach or work in a youth or sports organization to help with that. We talked about places of worship, hospitals, food banks, community cleanup. The other thing is your place of employment may have some places for you to volunteer. I know most of the places I've worked, especially in the more recent past, and I think most companies now have set up ways for workers to volunteer, whether they focus on a couple organizations that they choose to support, which is what my previous employer did, or they allow you to take so much time off every year to do volunteer work in whatever way you choose. Most organizations now are very supportive of their employees going out and volunteering in the community.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I've done a couple of legal clinics where you offer your time and
Yeah. So my last company that I worked at, we did a food drive every year to support the place where I now volunteer, which is the Interfaith Food Shuttle. And we tried to fill up one of those small trucks every year by just getting people to bring food in or get their agents to donate food of some sort. And we tried to fill up the truck and then donate that whole truck to the organization. And I think they are still doing that, even though I'm no longer there. And I wasn't the person that started that by any means. It was one of our employees who did it and got it rolling. And now I think it's a regular thing that they do, which is great. We also had people that did Habitat for Humanity. And then we had a thing that we tried to do every year, and I don't know if they still do it. It was called Karaoke for Kids. And we found organizations that supported children in the community, and we did a karaoke night, invited all of our customers to come and compete in these karaoke things and get donations.
Right.
And that was so much fun.
That does sound like fun.
Oh my gosh, we used to have a ball doing that. And we raised a lot of money for these organizations. So look to your employer as well. I think it's definitely a way to, if you aren't sure where to start, to find a way to give back. So I think that covered most of the stuff from that article we found in the Help Guide. The next article was from the Mayo Clinic. And obviously, they were focused on the health benefits of volunteering, and it very much supported all of the stuff we just talked about. They did give some statistics, which, of course, I love a good statistic. So I am going to give you some numbers around what they found. So first of all, again, they noted that it improved physical and mental health because it keeps you moving and thinking. And the research found that volunteering among adults age 60 and over provided benefits to physical and mental health, and volunteers report better physical health than do non-volunteers. And that's been proven out. It led to lower rates of depression and anxiety, especially for people 65 and older.
Okay, so that one is a big one for me.
It is.
Particularly because my dad is older and tends to be lonely.
Yes.
And I don't know that volunteering would be an option for him just because of his health and circumstances. But if you have an older person in your life and they are relatively healthy, but you see them needing companionship and needing social interaction, volunteering might be a good option. I knew someone in years past who had an older father, and he was in his 80s, and he volunteered every week at the hospital.
Yeah.
And he loved it. And all he did was basically, he was the guy that came around with your wheelchair when you were getting discharged from the hospital and would wheel you to the front.
Yeah.
So, and he was physically able to do it. He was a pretty strong, healthy guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a big deal for him. Every week he would go and volunteer.
Well, and in this article, the Mayo Clinic did say that a lot of their volunteers are seniors. Mm-hmm. And, they find different things for them to do based on their abilities. And one thing to note that even if you are older, there are things organizations can find for you to do at home if you aren't mobile. If you can't, you might be able to make phone calls. You might, at one point I did thank you notes. Certainly someone older that's at home and doesn't necessarily feel comfortable being around a lot of people because of COVID or whatever.
Or can't physically. They're not mobile enough.
Don't be afraid to ask and see what you might be able to do from home. I think because it still can benefit you if you're doing that. But Mayo Clinic also found that by spending time in service to others, volunteers report feeling a sense of meaning and appreciation, which, again, very important, especially for older people who aren't interacting a lot with others. It's both given and received, and that reduces stress and other problems such as heart disease, stroke, depression, anxiety, and general illness. So that's what their study found.
That's amazing.
It is. I know. I love that. Okay, so the second reason they feel that it benefits your health and wellness is that it provides a sense of purpose and teaches valuable skills. We talked a little bit about this, right? And so for them, a lot of the things that they do at Mayo Clinic, they use seniors for. Right. And sometimes they just have them knit sweaters or blankets, and that's certainly something you can do at home and then just provide to the hospital for the patients or whatever. Or they might work at the gift shop or do clerical duties for some of the staff at the hospital. Or they can bring pets, be there with pets because they do those therapies with the different pets for patients. So, and there again, you're finding a purpose for your time.
Right. All kinds of volunteer opportunities.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And then the last thing they found was that it nurtures new and existing relationships, which again, we talked about from the last article. So just developing friendships, strengthening family ties, whatever it might be, you're being in community, you're socializing, and that's always good for us as human beings.
Absolutely.
So that was an interesting article, just again, supporting what we've already seen. And then the last one was a little different, but I found it interesting. And this was from Greater Good, which is part of Berkeley. And it talked specifically about how volunteering can help your mental health. And one of the questions they posed at the beginning, which I thought was very interesting, was, but does volunteering make people happy, or are happy people simply more likely to volunteer?
So I actually did read the article, and I was not surprised by their answer.
Right?
Right.
I know.
Because I have heard this many, many, many times over the years. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the researchers found that even when they accounted for a participant's initial level of well-being before they started volunteering, people who started to volunteer became happier over time. Mm-hmm. It's not a surprise to me either. Although they did say it is true that happier people do tend to spend more time volunteering, their study suggests that you don't need to already feel happy in order to benefit from it. And some research suggests that people who start out with lower levels of well-being may even get a bigger boost from volunteering than those not.
This is so huge for me. This is a really, really big one. because I have always heard over the years that if you are feeling down in the dumps, if you're blue, I don't know about full-on depression. I mean, I've never talked to a mental health provider about this, but I have heard over the years that if you're feeling low, one way to help ease those feelings is to help somebody else.
Absolutely. I think you could read that pretty much anywhere, and it's turned out it's very true. So it can help so much in so many ways.
For sure. Absolutely.
So the other thing they did was to get a sense of how large the benefit of volunteering was. They compared it to the effects of people's income. And to me, this was another interesting thing. They found that for a participant earning an average middle-class salary, that volunteering was essentially worth approximately $1,100 a year.
Okay, so explain that.
So, in other words, volunteering would make someone as happy as having an extra $1,100.
Well, I mean, that says it all.
And for some people, I mean, that's a lot of money, period.
Yes.
Not just for some people, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, yes.
So think about that. That, to me, is really cool.
It is cool.
I love that they were able to somehow
put a dollar figure on it,
and that it's worth at a minimum $1,100, right? It's great. Mm-hmm. So I really love that.
I do like that too, and I think it's funny to state it in those terms.
I do too.
In dollars and cents, right?
I do too, but sometimes that is what it takes to convince somebody,
spur somebody on,
right? You never know. Mm-hmm. So the last thing they talked about that I found interesting was that the researchers found that participants 16 to 24 and 55 to 74 were especially likely to benefit from volunteering, perhaps because of the opportunity to build social connections and new skills. Mm-hmm. Remember, this study was based on how it benefits you mentally, right?
Right.
Your mental well-being. But I think that that's probably true for every other area as well, that those are probably the folks that benefit the most.
Right.
So anyway, I found doing the research on this fun and interesting because I love to volunteer. And like I said, I have my whole life and will continue to do so because I know personally the benefits from it. So Joy, what have you found when you volunteered? What was your takeaway when you spent time volunteering?
I loved it. I volunteered at food banks as a member of Rotary. I was president of my Rotary Club for a year. As a member of Rotary, I volunteered helping with projects to put books together for underserved populations. Quite a bit of volunteering over the years, and it was always fun. Mm-hmm. And it was always just uplifting, and it served to help the community, and it was just social opportunities. I had so much fun volunteering at the food bank with some of my Rotary folks because they were older men. And
they're a riot.
I think I was the only, there may have been another female there, but they're these older guys, and they loved having me around.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure they did.
We had so much fun.
Yep.
And when I volunteered on the book project, it was me and another older guy, and we just had fun.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah.
So he's looking at me, I'm looking at him, and we just saw the kind of humor in the situation, but also appreciated each other for being there and willing to do the work. And it was just, I enjoyed it.
Right.
So,
right.
Volunteer opportunities in many of the organizations I've been a part of over the years, and I've enjoyed every single one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much fun. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage you, if you aren't already, to find something that is of interest to you where you can spend a little bit of time. They really don't ask much of you typically. It may be a few hours here and there. Most organizations are just so grateful for whatever time you have. If it's an hour every couple weeks, if it's 3 hours once a week, whatever it is that you can do, try to find time to do that. I think you'll be surprised at how much it will benefit you. And another thing, with our audience, if you've got parents who are retired and you feel like it would benefit them to volunteer somewhere to fill up some of their time and make them feel more purposeful, maybe you can help them find a place to volunteer or something like that to do with one of their friends. Or you could go with them initially to get them started and get them out there, because it's going to benefit them much.
Could be a group activity.
Right.
Yes.
And same with your kids. Please encourage them to volunteer and start now while they're young. They're going to appreciate it as they get older, and they can pass that along to their own kids, because it's a great thing to do for yourself and your community and an organization in need.
I agree. Wonderful.
So, yay.
Yay, volunteers.
Yeah, I know.
Yay.
This subject just makes me so happy because I love it so much.
I love that you're wearing a bright color today, too.
And, oh, by the way, Joy and I are going to do a video of doing some volunteer work. We're not quite sure yet, but I'm going to work with one of the organizations I've volunteered with here in Raleigh. And so look for that video coming up in conjunction with this podcast at some point.
Maybe Lucy and Ethel will make an appearance.
Who knows? We'll have to see.
You never know. You know how I love my hats and wigs.
Laverne and Shirley, Lucy and Ethel.
I love Laverne and Shirley. Oh, yes. Oh, yay.
We just don't know.
All right. Well, thanks for listening.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And we hope this spurs you to go out and find a way to volunteer.
Absolutely. And let us know about it in the comments.
We'd love to hear, or hear what you're already doing. Please share that as well. We would love it.
You can share it in the comments on our YouTube video, or you can share it on our social media as well. So
absolutely.
You can find all those details in the description. Okay. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Girlish Gurus. We hope you'll join us next time for another fun and interesting topic. And please be sure to check the notes for information and links that were included in this discussion today.
Also, don't forget you can find us on our social media platforms, starting with Instagram, Facebook, and now, including YouTube. You can find us by searching Girlish Gurus. And please remember to give this episode a good review and share it with your girlfriends, because the more interaction we get with our podcast episodes, the more episodes we can post. Finally, you can find us on our website, girlishgurus.com.
Thanks again.
See you next time.
Bye.